Hello everyone, in today's video I'll be reviewing The Mummy's Hand from 1940, the sequel to The Mummy from 1932. Unlike Dracula and Frankenstein that had follow-up sequels in The Mummy, there were no direct sequels, no continuity or follow-up to The Mummy. The Mummy sequels basically became your anthology horror sequels in the Universal Monster Mummy series. The first movie was a melodrama. This was more of like an action-adventure with a twist of comedy, kind of like Indiana Jones in the mix. The Mummy's Hand was directed by Christy Cabin, produced by Ben Pivar. The story was written by Griffin J., who also did the screenplay, and the screenplay was done by Maxwell Shane and Griffin J. The movie stars Dick Foran, Peggy Moran, Wallace Ford, Edgardo Segnali, and George Zucco. The plot to The Mummy's Hand is about Steve Banning, an archaeologist in Cairo. He finds a vase that could lead to the ancient tomb of Princess Ananka. It is unknown to Steve that Professor Anduheb is a high priest of Karna, who was responsible for looking after the mummy's Khlaris' tomb. Steve and Babe get money from a magician, Salvini. His daughter Marta wants the money back, so Marta, Steve, Babe, and Salvini and the professor go on an adventure to the gravesite where Princess Ananka is buried, and Professor Anduheb resurrects Khlaris. The Mummy's Hand was released on September 20th, 1940. After Universal's success with Son of Frankenstein, Universal figured, let's make sequels to The Invisible Man, The Mummy 2. Coming off fresh out their success from the 1930s, this was phase 2 for Universal in the 1940s. Universal did not really care or could not make up their minds that they wanted to reboot or make sequels, continuations of the monsters around this time period. There really was no telling what to expect from Universal around this time. People went in with an open mind to check out these sequels to the Universal monsters from Frankenstein, Dracula, The Invisible Man, The Mummy. Some of Universal Monsters sequels in the 1940s were like hit or miss, or made for a quick buck, but thankfully, this one here is a good one. This DVD collection I have right here has The Mummy's Hand. This is the first time I ever saw The Mummy's Hand. I am aware that there was like a double feature of like DVDs of like the Universal's like Mummy sequels, but I never owned those. I did not even know about like the sequels to The Mummy until like this DVD set right here from the collection, the Universal Monsters Legacy Collection. And of course, right here in 2022, we upgraded to Blu-ray and almost own every Universal Mummy series. As I mentioned before, despite there was like no continuity in this sequel and the rest of the series, they did use some footage from the first movie, did not use Karloff. Instead, they used Tom Tyler as the added-in footage. On James Rolfe's Cinemassacre Monster Madness, when he did a review on this movie during his like Monster Madness movie reviews in 2013, he mentioned how this was considered one of the first early slasher movies. But honestly, I don't count this as the first like slasher series, but I do agree with him that it does have the same like elements and formats to a slasher movie, with a slow killer killing his victims. This is definitely one of the best sequels to The Mummy in the Universal Monster series. It may not be dark or melodrama like Bride of Frankenstein or erotic like Dracula's Daughter. It's still a fun, decent, quality, entertaining movie, and solid. It doesn't fail. This is one of my favorites of the monster sequels as a kid growing up. When watching this movie, don't try too hard to take this seriously. It's not supposed to be serious. This was also one of the first Mummy sequels where the torch is passed down to the new teacher to be the caretaker for Khlaris, after the previous veteran caretaker gets old and dies. The characters Steve and Babe were like a poor man's version and a ripoff to Abbott and Costello, and if Abbott and Costello were trying to be serious action heroes. This movie was a precursor to Universal horror comedy before Universal made the monsters for comedy, and Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, The Mummy, and The Invisible Man. Steve was a good character. He was nice, charming, a gentleman, and really cared about helping Marta and her father. Despite he was trying to make a living, get rich selling an artifact that was a replica and not worth anything. But it was in fact a real vintage vase. Babe was also funny. He was funny, goofy, quirky. When he accidentally almost chokes on the rocks that were not marbles. He may have been for laughs, but he was very heroic when he had to be in the right moment. Marta was a great character, funny, serious, and did not take shit from no one. It's funny when she locks her dad to make sure he's not escape and gamble more of their money away. Instead of Boris Karloff coming back as Imhotep, the Mummy Khlaris is played by Tom Tyler, who was known for Western movies. I once remember reading that the reason why they selected Tom Tyler as for the part for the Mummy Khlaris is because of almost his identical look to Karloff with the mummy makeup on, which I think is true, but he doesn't really look anything like Boris Karloff. Tom Tyler also played Captain Marvel in the 1940s Captain Marvel TV serial. That was pre-Shazam from 2019, and that was the first ever Shazam thing before that movie. Not to get off topic, long before Marvel taking the name Captain Marvel, DC had the name originally, but once Marvel came along in the picture, they figured, hey, we're called Marvel, let's take that character's name. So instead, DC now in today's modern day comic books calls that character Shazam. The ending of this movie is great. Steve saves the day and gets the girl in the end. Happy ending. So that was my review of The Mummy's Hand. Like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and stay tuned tomorrow for The Mummy's Tomb.